You are the expert. There's a reason that person's talking to you. There's a reason why they've engaged you, hired you, whatever it is. So just remember, you're the expert. So if you're prepped and ready to go, you should have confidence.
Welcome to the Game of Her Own podcast, a free resource for women who work in the sports and entertainment industry. Each week, we get real and talk about the things that hold us back and how we can overcome them and keep climbing to the top. And the top is however you define it. We talk about the highs, the lows, and everything in between. Consider this podcast your secret weapon. You will learn from the best in the business and be able to take immediate action with all the advice that you hear. I'm your host, Jahaan Blake, a leadership development coach and consultant. I've worked in sports for 20 years. 15 of those years were spent working for the Red Sox, Dodgers, and the Cubs. After 15 years of working in the front office, I took a leap of faith and I started my own business. Friends, as a Black woman in sports, I know that the industry can take a toll on your confidence and sometimes leave you feeling defeated. Join me each week so I can support you on your journey. I promise you, each week you will feel stronger and more confident than the week before. So let's get started with this week's episode.
Y'all, can you believe that the Game of Her Own podcast turned 3 on May 21st? That means 3 years of episodes, 160 to be exact. I want to kick this listener question episode off with thanking all of you. Thank you for tuning in week after week. Thank you for sharing how this podcast has helped you. And thank you for being a part of this community. Now, I realize you have a zillion options for how you spend your time, whether you're reading a book, binge watching your favorite show. P.S. Currently, mine is Queen Charlotte. You should definitely watch it if you haven't. It could be spending time with friends, family, working, whatever, you get it. The list goes on. My point, I am unbelievably honored that you choose to spend your time with me and the Game of Her Own podcast. Thank you. All right, it's time to jump into today's episode. To celebrate the Game of Her Own podcast turning 3, I told you I would answer your questions. Before we do that, let me talk about fear for a minute. When you put out a call to action, sometimes you get crickets. Now, I'm sure you've been there. There is something vulnerable about putting yourself out there and realizing that what you're putting out there may or may not align with your audience. For you, that could be managing a team, asking them for feedback. It could be reaching out to clients, cold calling for ticket sales, only to have the phone hung up on you or no response to your email. I just want to remind you to push through that discomfort, because on the other side, you will find success. And that's however you define success. But you do not know until you find the courage to push through the discomfort. Now, I'm excited to say that I did not get crickets for this call to action I put out there, but because I cannot tell a lie, I really can't. I smile when I lie. So since I can't lie, I'm going to tell you that I have before received nothing. Crickets. I've emailed you all and I've heard nothing back. And I'm like, ooh, sometimes that hurts, but you got to push through the discomfort because, hey, 3 years on the other side is success. So 3 years, 160 episodes, and I'm still going, and I push through the discomfort. So for this topic, y'all came up with some great questions, and I can't wait to dive into them. All right, Game of Her Own listeners, are you ready? Let's do this. All right, so I played sports from 3 years old all the way to 22, and I swear it's why I like tackling things with the team. So I invited someone to join me during this episode. I've had the honor of watching today's guest co-hosts go from director to SVP in 5 years. She has worked in sports, events, and entertainment, and she is what I consider the definition of badass. Now, I might be biased because she is one of my best friends, but we became friends after working together. That's why I liked her, because she's such a badass. But I think if you had the opportunity to meet her, you would also consider her a badass and maybe a bestie. All right, Jen Andrus, welcome to the Game of Her Own podcast. I am so excited you're here.
I am too. Thank you for having me.
Y'all, I'm looking at the mic like you guys are in the mic, but this is the first time recording with someone else in the room. So it kind of feels weird, but fun.
Yeah, just so listeners, we are staring at each other.
So awkward.
We're
so close to each other. Okay, so Jen is going to read the listener questions and, of course, chime in with your point of view because we definitely want to hear it. But before we get there, can you share with everybody when you first fell in love with sports?
Sure. I first fell in love with sports because of my mother, another great female that's out there. Nancy, her name is Nancy. She was the first person that took me to a Cubs game. She would also drag my brothers along. We would eat sandwiches out of coolers and bags of chips back when you could do that. And that is when I fell in love with baseball.
I remember, well, I don't think I was there for that. I was there for the end of being able to bring your own food in.
Yeah. Do you remember that?
Yeah. And it wasn't that long ago. Like I got hired by the Cubs in 2010.
And you could still bring food in.
You could still bring your own food. Now I'm going to fact check that. And if I'm wrong, I will put it in the show notes. I'm not going to cut it or edit that part because I hate when people do that. Let me just be real with you guys. But I'm almost positive like you could still bring your own food in. Keep going.
Right. And from there, it was a very fast roll to becoming a Chicago Bears fan. Not a huge fan of the Blackhawks, although that is a badass team. And then I wish I could have played sports so well. I did try with soccer, various other sports, but it just ended up that I was a good runner, and that's still a sport. So I ran cross country and track in high school, and it ended once I graduated high school, but I was still a marathoner. So I ran 3 marathons. So that I love because it's it's very athletic and it's, definitely sports focused, but also it's mental as well, which I think is a huge part of being an athlete. It's also a huge part of being on the professional kind of, side from events and whatnot. It's all about mental and physical.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Never thought about that. And I really want to dig into that. Really good point, but I can't stop thinking about soccer. So you played soccer?
I did, but I was really young. Like she put me, like pee-wee soccer, and I just didn't have the coordination. I really wanted to be good, like you are, John, at soccer, because I know you played. I was not good, so I said, I'm good. I can go on the sidelines.
Yeah, all right.
Yeah, that's where the running came in.
But that's also self-awareness at a very young age.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, are you ready to jump in?
I'm ready. I have some great listener questions. I cannot wait to ask you them.
All right, let's go.
We have a great question from Tim. How do you muster up the confidence when interacting with executive level people?
First of all, hey, Tim, great question. Love that. Yes, we focus on women here, but men can listen too and jump in and listen to this podcast. So I love that you listen, Tim. Thank you for listening. Thank you for the question. This is a great question, and I'm going to say that a lot. So I apologize for that because I love the questions you guys are asking. First thing I want to bring up about that is shame. Oh, I'm so excited to hear your perspective, Jen, because I don't feel like you get nervous. Oh, you're not an anxious person. So I'm really excited to hear your perspective on this. I am an anxious person, and I know a lot of people who felt a lot of shame when they didn't feel confident talking to an executive. So let me explain what I mean. You think about going to talk to an executive, you get kind of nervous, you have to pump yourself up, then you talk yourself out of it, and then you don't do it, and then you feel a ton of shame. Or you do it and you stumble through it. You feel so embarrassed and you're like, I'm not good enough. How does so-and-so always do it? How do they talk to executives? They seem so confident, and it's hard. So one, let me tell you, you're not alone. I was right there with you. A lot of times I had to dig deep and find the confidence to do it. What I learned to do was not compare myself to others. So Tim, I'm not saying you're doing that, but that's for everyone who's listening. If you feel like everyone else is so good, you have no idea what they're thinking. You have no idea what's going through their head, but they are probably doing the work and find their confidence to talk to executives or talk to anybody. Sometimes people are just socially awkward. And I know some socially awkward people, and I won't call them out on here, but I know that in their head, they're thinking so many different things. So one thing I want you to do, Tim, and anyone who's listening, is if you have the opportunity to talk to an executive, make sure you prep. Prep is key. Someone said this to me when I was working for the Cubs, and it was so great. You're never going to be 100% all the time. So when you're having a conversation with somebody, even if you are at a B+, even if you're at 89, that's still really good. A B+ is great. So it's okay if it's not perfect. So take away that part. Make sure you prep what's the outcome you want of the conversation. That's important, right? If you have a conversation that's scheduled, we'll talk about impromptu in a minute. That's the easy part, or not the easy part, but something you have control over, prepping. Second is get curious about why your confidence is diminishing. What's happening? If you need to journal it, if you need to sit and meditate, just think about why, because that's going to help you in the future. It's going to help you understand. It's going to make you self-aware. And self-awareness is so key to being successful. So I work with my clients on figuring out the why, and then we figure out how to tackle it moving forward. Now, the surprise conversations can be tricky. So take a deep breath, just breathe. Know that the person you're talking to is a human. And we used to say this all the time when we were playing a really difficult team in soccer. They put their pants on one leg at a time, just like you. Like at one point they were a little, girl or boy, and like, it's fine. They might be nervous too. It's okay, right?
And if I could jump in on that,
Please do.
Jahaan, it's also okay to give yourself a minute, say, oh, that's a really great question. Let me think about it for a minute. And it's okay to kind of pause. It's going to be awkward silence, which is always awkward, right? But it's okay.
Mm-hmm.
I've done it so many times. And if you don't know the answer, just say, let me think about it and I'll get back to you. It's a really great question. You don't have to have all the answers right there.
Yep.
I, have talked to some of the biggest CEOs, C-suite, and I do that, and it's okay. But you come back and you've thought it through, and it's a better, smarter, more strategic answer.
Yes. Do you get nervous?
I don't. I wish I say I did, because most people do, but my mom always told me, pretend you're an actress. Like you were on stage, and when you were talking about kind of building that confidence, which, great question from Tim, is I practice in the mirror. So I'm looking back at myself, and I'm making sure I have eye contact with myself. I look at my mannerisms, but some people might think that's a little too far, but I'll tell you that some of these biggest pitches that I've done, I've practiced, and I kind of have my talk track. Yeah. And also just remember, Tim, and for the listeners, you are the expert. There's a reason that person's talking to you. There's a reason why they've engaged you, hired you, whatever it is. So just remember, you're the expert. So if you're prepped and ready to go, you should have confidence.
Yes, I love that. And I don't think the practicing is weird. I talk about it all the time on this podcast.
Totally.
Do it on Zoom, do it in the mirror, you do it on Zoom, record your face. I know that's weird to see yourself while you're talking, but put a freaking big Post-it over it and push through the discomfort.
Love it. Yeah.
Because when you do that, you're going to feel so much better next time. So I think it's 2 episodes ago, I did an episode on 10 tips on how to improve your confidence when presenting. So I'll link to that in the show notes so you guys can listen to it, but practicing is one of the things.
That was a great episode, by the way. So listeners, definitely go back and listen to it.
Another thing I want to tell you all to do is reflect after what went well, what didn't go well. And that's okay. You should have 3 for each. Don't write forever, because you're going to drive yourself mad. 3 points, right? 3 points,
totally.
What you did well, what you would change for next time. And as somebody who is anxious, has self-doubt, has imposter syndrome, if you do that all the time, you're going to start to notice themes, and you're going to figure out how to tackle those themes. So the key here, I think, is self-awareness. So it's going to help you.
I love it. I mean, all of it. I think, Tim, you're going to be awesome the next time you're in that situation.
It's okay just to be uncomfortable. So just get comfortable with being uncomfortable. And if you're not like Jen, who doesn't get anxious, which I'm super envious of, but if you are like me, who has to work to get that confidence up, it's a muscle that you have to develop. And I promise you, if you keep working on developing it, you're going to be fine. First podcast, the first, 20, I was super fucking nervous. And I wasn't even talking to executives. I was just talking to a mic.
Wait, can we go back to this? So Jahaan Blake, everyone, who you have been listening to for 150 plus episodes, the woman to me has the most confidence, was nervous for her first 20 or so episodes.
Yeah.
And how did you overcome that?
I just pushed through it. I practiced, I prepped, I did a ton of research I over-researched, and now I can do an episode and research that person an hour before and be fine. Before I would research a ton. I would practice what I was going to say. I'd practice some of my questions and say them out loud so they didn't sound foreign when I was talking to the person.
Yeah.
And then sometimes I would be honest with somebody. I would just say, woo, I'm excited, but I'm super nervous. And then what would happen is a lot of people would say, oh my God, me too. I'm like,
and then you're on the same playing field.
You are an EVP. So just like you said about me, I'm like, oh my goodness. So I guess what we're kind of drifting away from the question, but we're not, is like the thread that's going through it is nervousness and anxiety. And those are the things that anxiety and self-doubt and imposter syndrome, those are the things that like diminish your confidence. Right. And so those are the things you have to focus on the why and do things for you that your neighbor might not have to do. And by neighbor, I mean, not at your house, but at work, like they might not have to do that, but you have to do it. So another story, and I'll end with this, and Jen, still want to hear your thoughts, but I don't even know if Jen knows this story. So when I started my own business, Jen and I, before we were like besties, hired me to do the training development and the training manuals for this big activation. I'm an expert in this area, and I was still nervous. I was like, holy shit, I'm doing it. I started my own business. I have a big client. I have a big contract. Like, here we go. Put all this work into developing this, what I thought was a really good training manual.
I agree.
Everything I had set up, I was so excited. Hired my first, employee to help, contractor, so not a full-time employee. And it was like an hour before the presentation, the very, very first training. So Jen as the client, hands off. She's on the call, but she turns it over to me. It is my responsibility. An hour before, my nerves were so crazy that I started crying.
No way.
Swear to God. And my husband, Scott, was like, are you okay? And I was like, I didn't at the time. I was like, oh my God, I'm like so prepped. I'm so ready to go. But there was just so much nerves. I had to get it out.
Happening, right?
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. And so I did the training, and in the middle of the training, Jen texted me. So of course I have my phone on because I know I have client service to do even while I'm doing this training. So I have my phone on me just in case Jen's like, whatever, like, no, this isn't, you said something wrong, go back or whatever. So I have my phone, and she texted me. I was like, oh dear God. And she was like, this is the most inspirational training I've ever been on. I was like, holy shit, I did it.
You did it.
But like, I had no shame around the crying because I was like, I wanted to nail it. And I was so nervous, but like Jen, who's very successful, that wouldn't happen to you, right? Like that.
Maybe it has.
But like, that's not how you are. That's how I am, is what I'm saying. And like, now I'm okay with it. When I was coming up and I was junior, I felt shame around that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it totally does. So that leads me to the next question from Lauren out there. Thank you for your question, Lauren. She has a couple of them here, but I love this one that she sent is, why do we care what other people think?
Oh, yes.
So coming off that, like you said, we can, you come off a big presentation or interacting with an executive, and you kind of look at 3 pros and 3 things to improve, like you call them that cons, but then you start caring and worrying about it. And you think about it so many times, you'll drive yourself crazy, but why do we care what people think?
So Lauren, first of all, thank you for the question, and thank you for listening. So I feel like I'm on a radio show. First time caller, long time listener. So thank you for listening, Lauren. So that's the right question to ask. Like, why do we care what people think? What's tricky is it's unique for everybody, right? So for me, let me use my business, for example. When I started my own business, I was afraid to put myself out there. And then I had to get curious as to why, because I was like, this is not like me. I am like, come up with an idea, go, like get it done at this stage in my career. And so I was super like hesitant on some things. I was over like thinking some things. And I finally started to get curious as to why. And I was like, why? And then I was like, oh my God, I care what people think, but why? And I kept going and I kept going. It was because I was afraid of I was afraid of peer judgment. I was afraid of what my peers are going to think. And then I kept going with that. Now, maybe a lot of that is more stuff that I went through with my therapist, but like, I kind of just figured it out. I was like, oh, well, I care what my peers, why the fuck do I care what my peers think? Like, I had to like motivate, or what's the word I'm looking for? Like, pump myself up.
Yeah.
To be like,
change your perspective even a little bit.
Who cares? Like, that's not, if you wait for someone else's validation, so in this case, my peers, then I'm going to be waiting forever.
Exactly right.
I'm never going to do anything.
We all judge vocally, right? With our friends and our family and whatnot. Sometimes it's internal and you're just thinking in your own head. One thing that I started doing, because I did care what people thought when I got into the events, entertainment, and sports industry, I don't originally come from this. I come from criminal justice. So I was very nervous about what people thought about me. And it was maybe I was judging them a little bit at the same time. If you remove all of your judgment, it's crazy how suddenly you don't see or feel how other people may judge you.
Yes.
It clears
Yes,
your mind.
we have had this conversation before. And I actually got that advice from my business coach. And I was like,
Interesting.
yes, you're 100% right. So when I started my business, I was like, I don't know about you, but I would catch myself. A lot of the judgment is like quiet. Like you just, like you said, it's to yourself.
Totally.
And then when you're doing that, you just assume that other people are doing the same to you. And then like you get so like you freak yourself out. So it's an easy way to like stop, be kind to other people. And then you're just going to assume people are doing the same. It's a very strange, like it sounds really simple, but I'm telling you right now, like Jen nailed it. It's a great exercise to go through. It helps tremendously. I've done it. I've been in my business for 6 years now, and I've seen such a huge difference. And I'm so much kinder to people. And when I do judge, I catch myself and I'm like, what's, the question I asked myself, I was like, why are you judging this person? What's the insecurity that you have?
That is a great question to ask yourself.
So, and then I'm like, I examine it. Okay. This like, I have a friend that's really bossy, not you. And
Oh, thank God. Not me.
That would be weird. And I kind of stopped hanging out with her. And I was like, well, why? And I was judging her too. So it wasn't like I was disconnecting with her because she was like sucking or draining my energy.
Right.
It was more like that was getting on my nerves and I was super judgmental about it. And then I stopped and I was like, all right, what's the problem?
What's the real root of it?
So if she is like, why are you so upset? Like, why is it bothering you so much? Like, why are you talking about it? Like, why are you texting about her? Stop it.
And that almost just clears your head a little bit. And so there's kind of a 2-part question here from Lauren with that. And then also that could start dimming your light, right? Like you are up at this level and you think you're awesome and amazing. Then you start caring what other people think, all of that. So like, how do you stop that moment when you can feel your light dimming a little bit and you're like, oh, you catch it. How can I get back to that?
Yep. You can only dim your own light, right?
Totally.
So like Lauren's question, which I love, is how do you stop dimming your own light? How do you put an end to that? And
how do you take control of yourself in that moment? That
again is one of those things where you need to catch yourself. You need to catch yourself judging people. Right. You need to catch yourself shrinking is what I like to call it. Shrinking for other people, shrinking so other people feel comfortable. And why are you doing that? Are you afraid to be too good?
Right.
Are you afraid to be too great? Like I can think of a perfect example when I first started with the Cubs. I was a director. Someone started about a month after me. Love this person. I'm not going to say his name. And he's still there. He's a badass. We started at the same time. And I remember his title was assistant director. And I was a director. And I couldn't understand why this man who had so much experience wasn't at the same level as me. And I just, for some reason, would be like, wait, you should have the same title as me. Why are you this? Like you have so many. And like
you were dimming your own light.
I was like, I felt like I was the imposter for some reason. But knock it off. Like, and I almost felt like I needed to tell him, like, I know you're my equal. So we could like
be okay with it. You wanted to clear the air.
Yes.
You wanted to clear the air, but it wasn't needed.
That's exactly right. It wasn't needed. He probably didn't even notice or care. What you need to focus on is what your job is. Like, what are your metrics that you need to hit? Not about, I don't want to say I was kissing his ass, but like, I can't find the right words for it, but like not making him feel comfortable and making you feel like small and shrinking. No, that's not going to help you guys work together. That's not going to make that person want you to be on their team, right? They're going to want somebody who is just out there fucking crushing it. Like, and that's what he went to do. And I actually looked to him, like he never knew this. I was like, oh, he's there to work. He's here to put, like, I hate to say this, but like put food on the table for his family.
Yeah.
He's here to provide for his family, kick ass, do well for the Cubs, make them money, also make himself money. And that's it. And like, and he was a great relationship person, or still is, and had these great relationships. Just texted me for my birthday. You know what I mean? Like, that's what you should focus on, not dimming your light so other people feel comfortable, because
you're there for you.
Yes. And what you're doing isn't effective. You dimming your light so someone else can shine is not effective, but you don't know that. Like, you think it is. I'm telling you right now, it's not effective. So I think to answer Lauren's question, to come back around, is to say,
closing the loop.
You have to get curious as to why. And that's what I did then. It took me a while. And then I was like, why do I care? Why am I doing this?
And Lauren, you should, like you said, Jahaan, Lauren, you should write it down. Like, you'd be surprised. I'm not a huge journaler. I tried it, but I will say I do meditate and I think about things, which is, just a form of just a different way to do it. But yeah, Lauren, write it down and look back and read it. And I think they'll be really helpful.
Yeah. Key point. Look back.
So we are going to change it up a bit here. We have a great question here from, I want to say it's Leah. It might be Leah.
I'm going to go with Leah, mainly because my middle name is Leah. So.
Oh, I love that.
Maybe. Yeah.
All right. Pretty name there. Thanks for listening, Leah. So what are your thoughts on sabbatical? Do you think it's good or bad for a career?
Okay. I'm a storyteller. You guys know that. I'm going to try to do this without telling a story. At the end of the day, I think a sabbatical is 100% good for your career if you need it. Like, that's the easy answer. And when you take a sabbatical and you know you need it, when you return to work, I imagine, I've never taken a sabbatical, but I imagine you're going to have clarity on what matters most to you. You're going to feel a different, I don't want to say refreshed and ready to work. I used to hate my boss to be like, yeah, go on vacation and come back refreshed and ready to work. What? Like, I'm not taking vacation for you. Like,
right.
Stop this. Like,
and I don't want to come back to work. I want to stay on the beach.
Yeah. I used to get so mad, but I could never articulate. This is very early in my career. I could never articulate. I did not have the words as to why that comment made me so mad. But I think it'll impact your personal and professional life, and you'll have clarity on what's most important to you, depending on what you go out to do. Now, here's the one thing that might stop people if they don't have psychological safety at work. So if you decide, Jen, you're going to leave for 3 months, but you don't feel safe that your job will be there when you get back, or you don't feel like the same version of your job, and that like your company, my boss has been gunning to bring someone else into this role, and he's been talking about splitting the role and doing all these changes to the department, you might not feel comfortable leaving. And that's really sad. And that makes me think you need to ask yourself, are you at the right place?
That is a great question.
Do you know anyone who's taken a sabbatical?
I do. I worked back at United Entertainment Group, which was part of Edelman. And when you're there for 10 years, you get a sabbatical. So I do know several people. I think the key with it is making sure that the team that's going to continue to carry your projects or your events, what have you, make sure your team is teed up for success. Because then, you're only as strong as your team. So if you're going to leave for a month sabbatical, make sure everything's teed up. So when you come back, it is just a well-oiled machine, and you're going to step right back into that. I think that'll also help your mental health. I'm on vacation right now, but you saw I worked this morning. So I had a little bit, believe it or not, anxiety of like, oh my gosh, I'm away, I'm on vacation. It's not sabbatical. But when you do go on sabbatical, you're constantly, just constantly thinking, is everything going okay? Like, do I need to check in? I always say the second you respond to an email or whatnot, you open the floodgates. That's your own choice. But guess what? Everything's going to be okay if you tee up your team before you leave for your sabbatical or vacation or whatever it is.
Yes. So what I hear you saying is establishing boundaries.
Yes.
I think the easiest part is to establish them. The hardest part is holding them. Like, so I'm not gonna lie, I've been on vacation with you a lot, or like, even if it's like a 2-day, like I'm taking 2 days off and I'm staying in the city, but like you work.
I'm always working.
Yeah. What about when you went to Thailand? Did you work?
I did not work, believe it or not. I also had, before that trip, I went to Italy for 2 or 3 weeks. And again, I had a very detailed document that had status and next steps of every element of the big activation that you had alluded to, that you provide all the staff to us for in the training. It was a big mobile tour, and I just teed up the team the best I could and said, good luck. If you have any questions, here are your resources to call. And one of them is not me, because I will be in Thailand.
And one of them is not me. So I think that's a good point. Setting expectations with your team.
Yep.
Letting them know, you say that a lot, like, my expectation is you do this. And I use the same language. It's just very clear cut. So same thing. My expectation is you're going to carry this forward for the next 3 or 6 months. You are not going to call me. I'm not going to see you, like, whatever it is. Like, I'm not going to do lunches with the teams. I don't want to think about work. I really need to disconnect. And your mental health is so important.
I agree with that. So Leah, I think you should take that sabbatical. Let us know how it goes.
Oh,
You want to know
yes.
what, are you going out of the country, beach, mountains? Tell us everything.
Yeah. Or you like, I feel like I thought sabbatical was like when people, it was a really good transition and I fucked it up. But to the next question, but I feel like I always thought sabbaticals were for like the academic world and like professors and stuff would take sabbaticals to like study
Right.
something. I mean, so I guess it's up to you. What did the language in UEG say? Was it like you get your sabbatical, you do you? You're not coming back with like a research project on.
No, meaning how do you spend your time during your sabbatical? It was 4 weeks and it was your time and you're not working and that's it. I think it was 4 weeks. It was tenure. But I want to kind of go back to Jahaan, what you said about traveling with me previously. And I am always working, right? It's kind of a boundaries thing. And I think one of the reasons why I do is because I absolutely love my job. I love my current job with Abel McCallister Abel.
Why don't you tell everybody what you do and who you do it for?
Sure. So I am the SVP of Production at Abel McCallister Abel, and we'll have Jahaan put the link to that in her show notes. We are a experiential fabrication agency, and usually PR firms and whatnot hire us to do amazing fabrication and builds for any kind of their marketing events. So it could be anything from a large brand, whether it's food, consumer packaging, et cetera. We run the gamut, but we do have in-house fabrication. So in our back of our warehouse, we have fabricators, woodworkers, welders, electricians. We build everything there. If anyone needs to hire us, let us know.
Nice plug.
Nice plug.
I'm not paying her for her time, so this works out perfect.
But I love my job. I just started Abel McCallister Abel, and the owners are amazing, and everyone that works there is amazing, and it's a tight team. I even loved my 2 jobs before this, Revolution Sports Marketing and at Unite Entertainment Group. And so, I do think that loving and hating your job, that really drives things. And there's this great question that came in from Tina, is how do you advocate for yourself in a job that you hate? Like, I love my job.
You are on fire with the transitions.
Yep, guys.
Wow.
That's it. I'm leaving out of here.
Natural.
But that is a great question that Tina put, is because if you hate your job, it kind of all connects, right? You're dimming your light. You're afraid to go on sabbatical. They're going to, might fire you. You get all these things, the boundaries, all of that. So how do you really advocate for yourself and keep moving in a job that you hate?
That's a great question. It's a difficult one. First of all, I want to ask you, Tina, like, you're in a job that you hate. Can you do something to find a job that you don't hate? So you have someone like Jen who loves her jobs and works. I remember when I was at the Red Sox, I think this led to me burning out. I loved the majority of the people I worked with. I loved the team. I was always working, but I didn't care being on this vacation. Like, my clients know I'm here. They also know I'm here for them and I'm still working. And that doesn't make me feel like, oh, like, bummer, I have to work. Like, I can't, no, like.
Because you love your job.
Yeah, it's just fun. Like, we were working this morning. I mean, we're still working, but like, I don't know. I enjoyed it. We worked 4 hours yesterday in the morning and thought nothing of it. It didn't ruin our day. I digress. So if you hate your job, can you find a job that you like? Now, while you're there, use it as practice. That's what I tell everybody. So I'm going to link to a couple of episodes I have about how to advocate for yourself, how to use like a weekly top 3. I talk about, I'm not going to go into it now because it's going to make this episode super long and I'm going to lose people. But there's certain ways that you can advocate for yourself. Actually, Tina, I'm going to send this just to you. I have a webinar that I do on advocating for yourself. So I'm happy to send that to you. The only call to action I give you is to reach out to me. So
I think that's a great call to action, because John, I think you could really help her. Yeah, she should definitely reach out.
Yeah. So it's a free webinar. I've done it for a couple of different groups for free. So I'm happy to share that with you. Now, if anyone else is listening and they're like, oh, well, I want it, and that's fine. You can email me, and that's in the show notes, how to email me or message me on LinkedIn or on Instagram. So I'll send it to you. But while you're there, use it as practice. Make the most of it while you're there, because at the end of the day, if you don't care and you hate your job, challenge yourself and practice. I used to do it all the time with some executives. Oh, I'm not going to name names, or organizations. This is when I worked for teams. Oh God, they drove me nuts. And sometimes they got to me There was one time when I had to walk away because the tears, like you could feel them coming.
You're so angry. You
and then like I walked away. I'm like, this is, and I would flip it. And I'm a silver lining person. I will always find the silver lining to something. And I was like, you know what? This is great practice. Go back, figure it out. If you don't change his mind, it doesn't matter. You're not going to win them all, but you can practice for the next time you get a difficult person. And you're going to, next time you have a difficult person, you're going to be like, that wasn't so hard. I dealt with this asshole last time. Like, this guy's a piece of cake.
Right.
Sorry for the cursing. I hope you don't have kids in the car. I would use it as practice, make the most of it while you're there, listen to the webinar, and just ask for what you want. Use your voice. Do not be afraid, and do not let the people who are trying to hold you back, don't let them do it.
I agree with that.
Don't let them do that. What they're doing to you is what maybe someone did to them, or they find you to be a threat and they know that you're really good.
So no, bye-bye. No, we don't want that.
Yeah. As my mom used to say, don't let them take up rent in your head, like, for free. She said it much better than I just did, but like, don't let them, what's the saying?
I don't know, but don't take up rent. Yeah, but don't take up rent in your head. Yeah, like don't even.
For free. Like, no, absolutely not. Space in your head for free. Absolutely.
Because then they win because you're now worried about it.
Yes. And they're doing that on purpose. They are so conniving. It's so sad. It's so sad.
I do love what you said about use it as practice, because I'm going to say, and I won't mention these jobs that I had, but there were ones that I hated. I have hated my job. You look back when you've had these terrible jobs and they made you stronger. So again, use it as practice. I mean, I've been in a couple of very bad jobs, but now I love my job and I use those as practice. And I remember that and I change as a person and I'm stronger now and I'm smarter and I'm more efficient.
Some of the toughest conversations we have are the ones that we have with ourselves. We can convince ourselves to believe stories that we don't even know are true. What's crazy is we allow that story to take a toll on our confidence. Have you been there before? I know that I have. We get in our heads. We beat ourselves up. Here's some tough love. Nobody's got time for that. We are high achieving women who have big career goals. We don't have time to get in our own way. And I am here to support you with my new one-on-one coaching program, Step Into Your Power and Own Your Career. My clients have told me that when we work together, I've helped them get out of their own way, regain their confidence, learn how to manage their emotion and mindset. They've told me that they've been able to get their voice back and use it with confidence. The most important thing, they've told me that we've identified the obstacle that was getting in their way. If you want to learn more about this program, scroll down in the show notes, click on the link that says Step Into Your Power and Own Your Career. You can set up time to chat with me and we can figure out if this is the right program for what you need. All right, let's get back to the episode.
So now we're going to go on to the next question here. This is kind of a fun one here from Julie.
Julie.
What sporting event, Jahaan, would be an absolute dream to work?
Women's World Cup.
Yes.
So this year, if you're listening to this episode when it airs in 2023, the Women's World Cup is in Australia. I really wanted to go. I tried to use some contacts. It didn't work out.
Bummer.
Everyone I talked to who's like in the contract, like freelance world, was like, yeah, we've been trying, but what we're being told is like they're so fully staffed, it's international, and they're so like it's so far away. Sometimes companies look to staff locals. When they don't have them that are talented enough, they look elsewhere. Or not talented enough, but like they're not comfortable with. They look for people they're comfortable with. They had those people there. Not to say that there's not Americans who are in Australia right now,
right,
working the World Cup or companies. I'm not saying that, but as a freelancer, I was positioning myself not as my company. I was just kind of like, I just want to go help. And it was last minute. And
so they already probably had a plan.
Yeah. So everyone I was trying to reach out to, I was like, I did, though, in all of my research, find the head of marketing, who's a woman for the World Cup. And
that's amazing.
She's going to be on the podcast. So I'm interviewing her on Tuesday. So by the time you guys hear this, it will be recorded. And I don't know what date it's being published, but
that's amazing.
So I did find her in all the research.
Can't wait to listen to that podcast.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you kind of get ahead of yourself with what you said that it was in Australia and maybe they're going to utilize more of the local staff, right? For efficiencies, versus potentially flying from other countries? How can you get ahead of that with the World Cup maybe being in the States?
That is such a great question. Because in my head, I was like, I can't wait to start pushing for the States. So I'm going to start really early. So I'll link to this episode in the show notes. I do an episode on how to land contract work. For me, this is going to be contract/consulting. So this would be hiring my entire company versus just me trying to pop in as a freelancer, because I thought that would be an easy way in with such short time. So now I'm going to just pitch the work that I do.
Yes.
I'm not going to get into too much detail because I don't know, competition may be listening. No, I'm just kidding. But like, I mean, am I though? But like, I'm going to start that now. And the work
Smart.
that I do and having a capabilities deck and my website and all those things, I'm going to start now presenting like myself and trying to be like that.
Love that.
So that is the dream, Julie. So thank you for that question.
And Julie, think about what event is like on your list, on your bucket list, and start doing your research now too.
Yeah.
So Jahaan, over 150 plus episodes, you have interviewed some of the best people. I now have the honor of interviewing you with your listener questions, which is just such an honor. So thank you for that. One question came in from Fane. I hope I'm saying that right. Fayne, pretty name. Who is the top person you want to interview that you haven't yet?
So I have one person. So Fane, I hope we're saying your name correctly. Thank you for the question. Thank you for listening. I would say Cynthia Marshall. So I think she goes by Cint Marshall. She is the CEO of the Dallas Mavericks. She was hired by Mark Cuban to help. Do you remember, listeners and Jen, when like the Dallas Mavericks had all these internal problems in their front office? Yes. And in a lot of it was like how women were being treated,
Very public.
Yes, toxic work environment, toxic work culture. So she was hired to basically fix it. Let's just like she was the fixer. She was brought in. And now I don't know the stats before, but I do know now that it's 47% or 50% women.
Wow, at the Mavericks.
And I believe it's 47% people of color.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So diverse from all angles.
Yeah. And so she has a great book out. She just seemed like I want to interview her, but she's also been on like the Today Show, the whatever CBS is called, like you know what I mean? She's been on all those morning, like she did a whole circuit for her book that came out. She's very well known. Like she speaks a lot of different places, but it's my goal to get her on. So as I'm saying this, I'm thinking, I tell you guys to like, I swear this wasn't planned, but I tell you guys to shoot your shot all the time. Like, so I feel like I keep talking. I think someone asked me this in episode 100 when Stephanie interviewed me, and I said the same person, but I still haven't done anything.
Yeah, I feel like maybe listeners, she might be diminishing her light a little bit over here. I think you should shoot your shot.
I should.
Yeah, and if anyone out there knows Mark Cuban or has any connection to Cynthia Marshall, we welcome that. We have to help each other in this industry.
It was well done.
You are so welcome.
Thank you, Fayne, for that question.
Yeah, Fayne, that was a fun one. So one from Sarah that we have here, which I think is a very interesting question. It is, what strategies, tools, or mindsets have been very helpful in publishing your podcast, especially as long as you have it? People do entrepreneurial moments and choices every day. And to Sarah's point here, you've been doing your podcast for a long time. You have incredible people that you interview on your podcast. So what are these strategies, these tools, or the mindset that you put yourself in?
Yeah. Hi, Sarah. Thank you for the question and thanks for listening. So let me go back. Sorry, y'all. Here's a story. Real quick, though. My husband always tells me to land the plane, and I'm super sensitive about it, but I'm a storyteller. So I started this podcast because I found a podcast when I started my business for the first time. I was just like, I felt very alone. I was like, I don't know what I'm doing, but I kind of do. And I was figuring it out. I found this podcast. It was dedicated to women business owners, entrepreneurs. And so I listened to it. I binge listened to it. I loved it. And I ended up hiring one as my business coach. That wasn't my intention. Didn't plan to get one, but I loved her. So I started listening to that podcast. I was like, God, I really wish there was a podcast like this when I worked in sports at all different levels. And so that's why I created the game. I was like, oh, well, I'll just I'll just start one. I'll create one. And so it took me a year because I was so busy with consulting work, and then COVID hit. And we're like, oh, well, now's the time to do it.
Perfect time.
I have so much free time because all of my work is fan facing. Not going to work during COVID. So I started the podcast, and what I found that worked best, and I did it off the bat, was to have structure, also flexibility. Like I set up structure and boundaries around it. But as Stephanie, my editor, knows, like I also sometimes, like my body's like, nope, you're not going to be able to come up with the show notes. You're not going to come up with like the email you sent out. Like my brain is just not working, and I need to like give myself a little bit of grace. And I know that saying is overused, but like I do it, and I'll text Stephanie, can I get this to you like 2 days from now? And she will tell me yes or no. And she has her own boundaries, which I love. And then I kind of am like, all right, she said no, you get your shit together, like drink a ton of coffee, figure it out. Or I'm like, okay, good. I'm just going to do a shitty first draft and then come back and do it like the next day or whatever. So structure, but flexibility, listening to my body. And then in the very beginning, it was pushing through the discomfort. So a lot of podcasts don't get past episode 8, I believe Stephanie told me. So after 8, she was like, congratulations. So I had no idea. And she told me after, and I was like, really? She's like, yeah. And then I started to notice, I was like, oh, that is a theme. Like,
and that's also really cool, Jahaan.
Yeah.
Accomplishment. And you're a number, I don't even know what it is. 160
aired yesterday. So
160. Yeah, girl.
So thank you, Jen. So that I would say is the most important thing. And then also having a editor and a partner that you trust. Know what you can do and what you can't do. I know that I can edit. For example, I made what I thought was a kick-ass going away video for Jen when she just recently moved to Nashville. I had so much fun editing it. Like it was a lot of work, but it was just fun. Editing this podcast would not be fun for me because I'm a perfectionist or recovering perfectionist, and I would be so anxious about it. So I knew that about myself. And I hired somebody, even though I knew budget-wise, I was like, oh, like, should I do this? Should I make this investment? It's a free resource for people. I should not be like spending money on it. But I knew it would never get done if I didn't have a partner. And having a partner that you trust and that's really good and really talented is important. So Stephanie Young is my podcast editor and co-producer, and she's amazing. And so shout out to Stephanie, who just recently got engaged.
Yeah.
And also she has a full-time job, but she also has her own podcast, If These Walls Could Talk, about the Edgewater Hospital. I hope I got that last part right. But yeah.
Check that out. Great plug.
Yeah, great podcast. We'll link to that in the show notes. And when I say we, I mean Stephanie.
Here's the other thing. I think it is a very great question when you are doing when you have your own company or your own podcast, right? Where do you spend money? I think it also connects with your mental health, listening to your body. You know you could do it, but you might drive yourself crazy doing it. You don't want to spend the money either, but I think it's well spent money. Otherwise, your body might just shut down. So I think that was a very good point, is listening to your body. Listen, we are not all superheroes. We want to be, but sometimes it's okay to say, let me give myself a minute. Like you said, you would call Stephanie and you'd say, I can't get it to you by this date. Can we do this date? You may as well ask, because the worst thing that's going to come back to you is a person says no, and you're in the same situation you are. But what if the person says yes? It's okay.
Yeah, exactly. And the podcast Biz Chick that I listened to and binge listened to and still listen to this day, she would always say, her like tagline was like, just because you can do something doesn't mean you should.
Love that.
Hiring as much help as you can afford, right? Like you guys who aren't entrepreneurs who are listening, like, well, yeah, I can't just hire, an employee that doesn't work here. But if you can hire as much help as you can afford, because because you can do it doesn't mean you should. And I think what that translates to people who have full-time jobs, think about delegating and how you delegate to your employees if you have a team, how you take on work. Like I know sometimes you say like, I'm just gonna do it, it'll be faster.
So what if you have trouble with that? So what if it's hard to delegate, or you don't have the right team, or maybe you come into a company and it's not set up the way that you normally would operate? What are some steps that you can take to start changing a company culture that maybe is resisting that when you come in? So it was a great question from Erica.
Literally on fire with the transitions, y'all.
But I mean, that's a great question. I have actually been there, Erica. I have been with a company that was resistant to change what I thought, but I'd love, Jahaan, to hear your perspective on that.
So wait, I think Erica's is we got a lot of questions. I only selected a certain amount, tried to keep some light, a little bit, like dive deep into topics, but I just selected a few questions. So thank you all. I'm not a few, but you get it. So I think Erica's the last one. Is that right?
Erica's the last question, and we are closing out with a fantastic question.
Yeah, this is a difficult question. So Erica,
difficult.
Thank you for this question. Thank you for listening. What are some steps? I'm going to say it again so I can get my brain going, but what are some steps you can take to change a company culture that's resistant to change? Erica, run. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
Don't listen to that.
But here's the deal. That's a hard task. So it depends on where you are in the company, what level you're at, what department you're in. A few things that you can do. One is you're probably already doing this. What do you want the company culture to look like? Do you have a team, Erica? Can you start demonstrating the behaviors that you want to see within your team? So that's what I would always do when I was hired to work at these different teams, really more so the Dodgers and the Cubs. No, and the Red Sox too. Like, okay, there's always a problem with how the frontline employees, when I say that, I mean ushers, ticket takers, food and beverage, how they were interacting with the fans. So the group that I hired, the ambassadors, well, they're going to be the model. They're going to be the example of what we need to get to. So let's start small with a small group. So that's one thing you can do if you have a team. If it's just you can start. If you have people who agree with you, you all can kind of start together. So that's one step. Now, I don't say that you should go at it alone or just have one department that way, but start building that culture that you want to see. Also, start getting involved in any committees that are available. So if HR has committees, whatever, employee resource groups that you have that you can join and be a part of. Now, it's interesting because some people are like, well, great, employee resource groups are great, but like it's more work that I'm doing and I'm not being paid for.
And you're trying to balance that with your normal job every day.
Yes. So again, that goes back to what do you do when you're in a job that you hate? How do you advocate for yourself? Well, how do you do this in a job that you don't like the company culture? We'll use it as practice. Right. And so if you can make some change, you can use that. If you are to leave, you can use that for a job interview and say the change that you made and the impact that it had on the organization. Or in your own company, you can say, it's been a year. Here's the impact that I've made over the year. Here is how changing a company culture obviously does not change in 1 year, but here is a change that I've made. And here's a positive impact it's had on the organization. Show me the money. Right. And please don't say it like that, Erica. I mean, you do you can say it however you want, but so you know what I mean? So that's one way to look at it, but you have to start with small steps. And this is going to build your, I hope it's resilience or thick skin. It's not going to be easy, but finding if it's not your team that's modeling the example, or maybe it is, and then you're getting some other step you want to take is getting some allies.
Yes.
I really wish I wrote some of this down so I can summarize it for you again, Erica. I'm usually good at that, but I was really
off the cuff here.
Yeah, I was kind of going and I want to go back, but you can just hit rewind if you want to. So that's where I would start. There's some little steps. I think allies are important. I think modeling the behavior is important. I think having your team model the behavior is important and getting involved with employee resource groups. I did it. I went back, I did it.
I love that. And I've been in this position, if I could chime in, and it is not fun because I am 99% of the time a very positive, bubbly person. When it comes time to try to change that, don't focus on what's wrong. I would bring to the table on what you could do to make it better. So that's, whether it's in your personal life, in professional, whatever, always focus on how you can make it better and don't dwell on what's not working. I also think that just positions you as a leader, even if it is something just with culture, not something with your client event or whatever, projects you're on. But yeah, that's going to be a difficult one, Erica. I would challenge you. It's going to be an uphill battle. And I challenge you to start with baby steps.
Yeah,
it's possible.
I think everything you said is dead on, exactly right. And the key word you said is it's going to position you as a leader. And that's, again, it's really good practice. It's only going to make you better. And if you can't get it done in that organization, it does not mean you're a failure.
Totally.
And you could take your new skills that you learned and take it somewhere else to where they're going to appreciate it.
That's right.
Ooh, I feel like we're in church. Woo. All right. So y'all, thank you for these questions. This was awesome. Jen, this conversation was awesome. But
I
before
loved
we
it.
stop, I have 12 questions for you.
No,
I'm making you do the rapid fire questions. I didn't tell her until right before we hit record, and she's not happy with me, but whatever.
So I have been thinking about these rapid fire questions because I listen to your podcast, obviously. And I always think, how am I going to answer that? So I'm really nervous, but let's do it.
All right. First thing that comes to your mind, that's it.
Okay, I'm ready.
All right. First one. What is your favorite sports moment?
The Cubs winning the World Series, obviously.
Yeah. I don't think I knew you then. No, I didn't.
You did not. I think we met. I think that was no, we didn't know each other yet.
Nope.
I think it was the following year. That was an amazing moment. I do remember that every person that came into work the next day, because we were in the office before COVID,
Yep.
was hungover. Because even if you weren't a Cubs fan, you still were very excited.
Yes.
Yeah, it was just the most amazing moment. And I spent it with friends. And then when they did win, I called my mom, who, to bring it back from beginning of the podcast, she was the one that introduced me first to sports. And it was awesome. So go Cubs.
I love that one. All right. What is something people always get wrong about you?
Oh, I'm going to say the same answer of the ladies that you just interviewed on the kind of, I think it was more of like the two ladies you just interviewed.
Yep. About working mothers.
Working mothers. Thank you. I'm going to do, one of them answered this, that people think that I'm mean. I'm not mean. Again, I'm 99%, a very bubbly, positive person. But I think when I get to be matter of fact and just say statements, people take that as me being a little bit mean or maybe coming off a little angry. It's just to be more matter of fact. But I think because I'm so positive and happy and bubbly, majority of the time, people can, think that when those moments happen. But I'm not. I'm the nicest person ever. And
you hold people accountable and you will say it and you're straightforward, and that takes people back. They're like, oh,
I think so. Yeah. Yeah, you nailed it.
I wonder if sometimes that's because you're a woman. I wonder I don't think it's 100%, but I wonder in people's minds, would they take it the wrong way? Would it upset them if it was delivered by a man?
It's a great question.
Just a question. What is one food that you wouldn't want to give up?
Sandwiches. I love sandwiches. More the deli style, not the panini style.
How much do you love sandwiches?
I love sandwiches so much that I could eat them every day.
Do you talk about them on your social media?
I do. Jahaan is segueing very perfectly because just so y'all know, I am an influencer. I have about 200 followers on my sandwich Instagram page at Jen on a Roll.
I think you're at 300.
I'm at 300. All right. Well, I don't have as many followers as you, but that's how much I love them. So I had an old boss, Dan Bryce, out there, and he was the one with a friend that kind of jump-started this. But again, you guys are very influential, about 300 followers. So watch out.
If you can't tell, she's being sarcastic. But if people wanted to follow you, how could they do that?
At Jen on a Roll on Instagram, and that's Jen with one N.
Are you a morning or night person?
Morning.
Favorite holiday?
Oh, I'm going to say 4th of July.
Oh, okay.
I don't think anyone has said 4th of July in your podcast.
Yeah. I don't think so.
It's between that and probably Thanksgiving.
You only get one.
Oh, okay.
Dog or cat person?
Dog.
Yeah, I know that.
Yeah.
What product would you seriously stockpile if you found out they weren't going to sell it anymore?
Chapstick.
You are
For
obsessed
sure.
with chapstick.
I'm obsessed with chapstick.
What is your favorite app?
Oh, I would probably say Instagram. Yeah, I would probably say Instagram or Sudoku. I only get one.
So which one is it?
I would say Sudoku. Maybe.
Okay, that makes it easier for the next question. Twitter, TikTok, LinkedIn, or Instagram?
Instagram.
Who is your biggest inspiration in life?
I would probably say my mom. I plugged her like 3 times.
Oh,
Yeah,
her mom's so great.
Your mom is so great. I need to meet her.
No, your mom.
Oh, my mom is so great. Yeah, it's just, it's the sports side. She is a confident woman. And I think we all need that role model, because you can take confidence and apply it to anything, professionally, personally, all of that. So I would say my mom.
As a child, what did you wish to become when you grew up?
A marine biologist.
I think of it's George Costanza.
great reference.
Wow, I did
Yes.
not know that about you.
Marine biologist because I loved, what was that movie? Free Willy? Yep. And I just wanted to work with orca whales. Yeah. Is everyone laughing out there?
This is why you and Scott's my husband, for those of you who don't know, get along so well, because he loved that movie. Last question. Finish this sentence. The future of women working in sports is?
The word I want to use is like the sky's the limit.
Oh, I love that. That's a good one.
I mean, literally, the sky's the limit. You can do anything. We as women can do anything.
Jen, this has been amazing. It's been really fun having a co-host. Like while we were talking, I was thinking about how I can do this at least like maybe once a quarter. So like, I don't know if we can invite you back, or I say we, but it's literally me.
It's literally you.
Yes, I can invite you back. So like, maybe we do this more often. Maybe it's just a topic we talk about or something. But in the meantime, how can people get in touch with you?
People can get in touch with me with @Jen on a Roll on Instagram. It's Jen with one N. But also you can reach out to me at my email, which is jen@abmcd.com. I think Jahana put that in the show notes as well. But I loved every moment of this. I'm very honored, Jahana, you asked me to be a part of this, interviewing you and asking the listener questions. And I can't wait for the next one.
Yay! This was so fun. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Okay, I know you just said bye, but as you said that, something popped up. I was kind of doing some research while you were talking. I was multitasking. That's because I've done 106 episodes and I figured out how to do that. Actually, I don't do that very often. Anyway, I digress. You can bring in your own food into the ballpark. Now I'm looking, I don't know how credible this website is, but like I texted some people during we were recording this and they're like, wait, when could, like, you still can, what are you talking about? So then I was fact checking it. Apparently you can, you just can't bring in glass cans. I know this, you can bring in a sealed water bottle, but you can't bring it in a cooler. I don't need to give you guys the rules. All you know is that you still can. I really didn't know that.
It's good to know.
As someone who can't have dairy and doesn't really eat a lot of meat, that's really helpful.
Or doesn't want to spend $15 on.
That's really it. So next time you guys see me at Wrigley, I will pack my own peanut butter and jelly sandwich. All right, y'all. Thanks for listening. Until next time. So what did you think of this episode? Do you know another woman who works or is aspiring to work in sports? Would you do me a favor and share this with them? It would mean so much if together we could support and inspire other women on their journey. And let's stay connected. I love meeting and talking to new people. Follow me on Instagram @Jahaan Blake and join the free Game of Her Own community by visiting jahanblake.com. I can't wait to meet you.